Yo, what's going on guys? I'm SS Playbook and thank you very much for tuning into the part 2 of my trade deadline mock ideas. If this is your first time on the channel and you haven't already watched my Eastern Conference trade ideas, please make sure to do so. And it's already up on my channel. Because it's a longer video, I'll keep the intro short and sweet. If you like what you've watched today, feel free to like and subscribe as it helps out the channel. And let's get into it. Starting us off with the Dallas Mavericks. And wow, is the trade period really upon us? I've had to rewrite this script a million times it seems because of constant trades, but none as big as what just happened. After the blockbuster that was bringing in Anthony Davis, I doubt this will be their last trade. With a $4 million trade exception expiring this deadline and an almost $9 million one in the offseason, this allows the Mavericks some decent cap flexibility while they go under the first apron. Without many holes, the only one that I can see is perimeter shot creation. They already sit 23rd for 3 points attempted per game, and trading away a 3-point shooting shot creator for a power forward who gives you 1 3 every 2 games is going to stretch the likes of Irving, Dinwiddie, Grimes and the crew. Not to mention, they have some combinations of Lively, Gafford and Anthony Davis on the court. It makes the perimeter so much easier to defend. So calling up a team who themselves have had a big trade, I have the Mavericks acquiring Malachi Branham for Dwight Powell and a second. Nothing too much to this, so I'll make it quick. The Spurs, after trading Collins, don't have a true decent centre on their team. Wemby isn't indestructible, and if he goes down or wants to play at power forward, Dwight Powell can be their guy for the year. He also has a player option next year. At just $4 million, he can be a vet off the bench, or they can just buy him out. For the Mavericks, Branham is a shooter who's improved every year since being in the league. You run the risk of it being a lucky year for him, as he shoots 39% from 3 on only 2 attempts a night. He's only 21 and has been losing his role thanks to all the guards brought in and developed now by the Spurs, but because of Fox, they should be able to get him easy. But I mean, there's no other team that would take Power, so I guess take what you can, get in and get out. Other options for the Mavericks are just dumping Dwight Powell and or Dante Exum's salary, freeing up a spot for the buyout market. Next up, we have Denver. In turmoil early season with murmurs of its being the cause last season. But since moving Westbrook into the starters, the Nuggets have gone on a nice 14-4 run. Still in a gross money squish, which sees Jamal Murray and MPJ earn all-star money at $40 million for the next 5 and 3 years, the Nuggets either need to dump some salary or retool with some cheaper rotational pieces. If they are still looking to contend for the next few years, even with the roster they have constructed, they have a few areas they should clean up. They sit dead last in the NBA for 3-point attempts per game, with a staggering 19 attempts per game between them and the Celtics. They are also the 4th worst in the league at protecting the rim, although I mean Jokic isn't a known rim protector. They have gotten better in the non-Jokic minutes, but they are in desperate need of some backup creation. They're in a gross situation, however, with no picks at all, and all their young players are too good to trade, which makes a trade even harder. However, I originally had the Nuggets trading with the Wizards and Clippers for Mo Bamba, but since I woke up and he's been traded to the Jazz, the deal will look a little different because there can only be a straight trade for him. If multiple contracts are used, Bamba will have to wait 60 days to get traded. So the trade will look a little different, but here it is. I still like the prospect of bringing Mo Bamba, a bust of the 6th overall selection, but there is a reason why he's stuck around the league for a while. He protects the rim and does it well. He's the 15th best rim protecting bench center among all players who play on a nightly basis. Averaging 1 block a night in 12 minutes a game, averaged out to per 36, sees him average 3 blocks a night. That's nice and all, but he also holds down the rim, allowing his opponents to shoot just under 59%, 5 feet and under from the basket. You may think that's a lot, but comparing him to elite rim protectors, Wembanyama goes at a 60% rate, Jaren Jackson Jr. 60.5, Gobert 60.8, and he also has a better rate than Jarrett Allen, Edey, and Klingon. The main issue in his game is his offense. He is terrible. Although showing he can stretch the floor and surprisingly a career 35% shooter, I think he's more suited to the dunker spot and a pick and roll job, although maybe you could experiment with him outside the arc. The beauty is, in a Jokic-led offense, it's pretty hard to be bad. He'll just need to be active on that side, cutting, screening hard, lingering around the dunker spot, and occasional post entries. You can try him on court with Jokic or off the bench, it doesn't really matter. Some other names for the Nuggets could be Robert Williams, Neemias Queta, Monte Morris, or Alec Burks.
Inside finds Gafford, and Gafford, you don't see dunks of his blocked very often.
Moving on, we have the Golden State Warriors. As mentioned before in the East Edition, the Golden State Warriors are very egalitarian when it comes to the game of basketball, which sometimes can hurt them. They give too many players shots on the court, and sometimes it just straight up damages them. Also mentioned in the last video, they're in need of bulk points. They're 10th in defense but 17th in offense. It's not too bad overall, but sometimes their just offense stinks if they were without Draymond, and Curry has shown a bit of age, getting completely locked down in a few games. They brought in Schroeder to try and add a bit of offense, but Schroeder is a ball-dominant guard scorer. They should look to bring in some scoring from other avenues. With their contracts and picks, it should be pretty easy. There are a few good scorers that have been made available with this deadline. To me, there's no better scorer available than Brandon Ingram. Yes, Vooch is available, but I don't think you can go past Brandon Ingram this deadline. A one-time All-Star and an MIP, Ingram, since being dealt to the Pelicans, has been averaging 23 points per game with a career best in the 2022-2023 season, scoring 25 points a night. He has a bit of He has a bit of an injury cloud behind him, but when he's on the court, you're getting an efficient scorer. He's great as a mid-range scorer, he can score in isolation, he's been used in sets, and not to mention, he's a pretty good closer. His price tag is pretty hard to gauge, he's expiring and wants a lot of money next year. The trade I've come up with sees Ingram and Javonte Drain to the Warriors for Wiggins, Gary Payton II, Lindy Waters, and a second rounder. It could be pretty overs for the trade, but they dump Payton's bad contract. They'll lose a bit of defense, but there's no way they couldn't look to move Carl Anderson or Kevon Looney for a defensive specialist. But I mean, they're getting a guy averaging 22, 5, and 5. And plus, if they retain Ingram or if he signs for cheaper, it'll help them keep a winning team around Curry. The Pelicans get a great return for Ingram in Wiggins. The others are aging but could potentially stay around and be a part of another playoff push if they decide to. Other avenues the Warriors could explore could be Vucevic, who's a lot cheaper but 34 years old, Jeremy Grant. They could get Jakob Poeltl, Obi Toppin, or even Karis LeVert. Up next, it's the Houston Rockets. A great season for the Rockets with a suffocating defense, but man does this team have an ugly offense at times that is somehow rated 9th in the NBA. Their offense is prone to bogging down, but they have a lot of X factor with a few players being able to get it going down the stretch and have bailed the Rockets out of some bad losses. Their top two scoring options have shown a bit of inconsistency scoring, but it's still enough to get it done. They are the second worst three-point shooting team in the NBA at 32.5%, and that's just about all the negatives I found on this roster. Oh, and their third option Drake lookalike is earning $42.5 million. They have the third best record in the league and have beat some of the best teams this season. Do they go all in for a player? Do they do a little bit of retooling? Or do they do nothing? All moves are pretty valid in my opinion, but with how it's been going for the Rockets, I think they should go all in for a specialist three-point shooter. Calling up the Miami Heat, I have the Rockets acquiring one of the best three-point specialist shooters in all of basketball in Duncan Robinson, for a package of Cam Whitmore, Deshaun Tate, Jeff Green, and 2 seconds. With the Jimmy situation hurting the Heat, I expect a lot of its playing list to be made available. Duncan Robinson is no exception. Although a down year for the 6'7" guard forward, Robertson is still averaging 11 points on 37.8% from 3, shooting 7 a game. Robinson in his best years was making 4 a game at an insane 44% clip. Could a move to a contender reignite the even more elite shooting? I'm pretty sure it could, and would almost likely push the Rockets into the genuine contenders list, and if I was a betting man, I would put some money on the Rockets. Some other options I could see the Rockets going for is Alec Burks, John Collins, and some other options I rate but could be greatly changing to the Rockets would be using Drake's contract to bring in either Zach LaVine or Harden. On to the LA Clippers. A really bad situation for the Clippers as they don't directly own any of their firsts for the next 5 years, instead switching with OKC because of the Paul George trade, which I suppose is better than like top 10 or 14 protections. Now the Clippers are pretty much forced to try and compete every year while they bring in a pick 28 to 30 every year for the foreseeable future. They have little to no youth, with only 2 players being under 24 years of age. But more on this season. Their defense has been incredible, offense not so much. 20th in offense but 2nd in defense. It's ironic because they have arguably the best offensive player all time running the offense there. But how do they get better? The starters, they're fine, and with Kawhi in and out, I think their offense is a little underrated for what it can be at its peak. There are some good bench scoring options like Kevin Porter Jr. and Bones Hyland, Coffee to an extent, but that's really it. They should look to bring in a bench forward or center who can play and score the ball whilst providing the Clippers a 9 to 10 man rotation. I originally had Kelly Olynyk as the target, but since the trade to the Jazz today, which puts them under the luxury tax, it's pretty obvious they'll wait until the buyout market. It's even hard to find a trade for the Clippers to make now. They have a pretty solid roster and they are 6th in the conference, but I think it's only right they make a couple more improving moves. Calling up the Atlanta Hawks, I have the Clippers giving up Mr. Fourth Quarter himself in Nicholas Batum and a second rounder for David Roddy. Roddy is a big boy and played on 3 teams in 4 years, but after this trade, 4 teams in 4 years. So a career journeyman at age 23, and that's essentially why I put him in this trade. The Clippers don't have a lot of youth at all as they have 4 players under 24 and that's even including their two-ways. The Atlanta Hawks aren't looking to do too much this year after Jalen Johnson is now out after a shoulder surgery. And with the $25 million trade exception expiring in the offseason, I'd imagine they'd try and stockpile some picks to try and make a trade happen. For the Clippers, he's good enough to be on the floor for 10 to 15 minutes a night. He's an undersized 3 to 4, but he knows how to score pretty well, which is what the Clippers need. He defends alright, and although it's most likely an outlier of a season, he's shooting 37% from 3 as a career 30% shooter. He also frees up $2 million in cap, which puts him even more under the luxury tax. He was good in his Memphis days where he averaged 7 points per game, so it's just an easy, low-risk, high-reward pick. You know what you're getting from him, and with all the bonuses he brings such as more cap flexibility and youth, the Clippers should feel confident bringing this man in. Other options I have for the Clippers would probably just be dumping the salaries to open up roster spots for more buyout candidates. Moving on to the Lakers, who just dished away Anthony Davis and their 2 youngest players in Christie and Jalen Hood-Schifino, but they got the likes of Luka Doncic, who does wonders for the team. Doncic will spearhead the team for the foreseeable future, and rightly so. They have a few guys within his age bracket with Rui, Reddish, Hayes, Reeve, Necht, and Vando, but they are lacking in a lot of areas. There are a lot of ways that the Lakers could go this deadline. They have terrible guard defense that was bad even before the Luka trade. They also have no picks, with only 5 being directly theirs until 2031, which limits the sort of trades that they can make, which is an area I believe that they should prioritise. But I believe, firstly, they need to get a high upside centre to be Luka Doncic's pick and roll partner for the next decade. As I scroll through the pick and roll man statistics, I think I found their guy. I have Jalen Smith finding his way down to California in a 3-team deal which sees Jared Vanderbilt and a second rounder go to Indiana who send Obi Toppin to Chicago. Pretty simple and pretty easy. Synonymous for his goggles, Smith was a former 14th pick who was caught at a bad time on his first team at the Suns, who quickly moved into win-now mode, which saw him shipped off early. As I mentioned before, his advanced metrics regarding the pick and roll are pretty impressive, but let me show you how. This season on the Bulls, he generates 1.24 points per possession out of the pick and roll, as a roll man of course, which beats Rudy Gobert, which is also better than both the Maverick centers in Lively and Gafford, and just narrowly edges out Anthony Davis, placing him in the 76th percentile, 49th in the league, and 13th among the bigger forwards and centers, which is pretty good if you ask me. He's also 24, a decent athlete, has long arms, and has shown the ability to stretch the floor. Indiana accept this trade because they are in desperate need of wing defense. Now back from injury, Vando has had the chance to showcase his elite defense, notably locking up Steph Curry. Vando, earning $10.7 million this year, could be the perfect bench option to lock up opposing wings and bigger guards like Tatum, Brown, Brunson, Cade, etc. He's limited offensively, but if there's a system where anyone can score, it would be Indiana. Now on to Chicago. Chicago accept this because they are getting a better asset than what they are giving. Although taking on $12 million salary, Topic has had a few nibbles on him every year. He's on a good contract, is young enough at 26, and they can probably flip him down the line. Some other names could be Robert Williams, Neemias Queta, or dumping Gabe Vincent. Now we've got the Memphis Grizzlies. A team that's looking to do a lot this year, but similar to the Golden State Warriors, they love playing their full rotation almost every night. With an abundance of young players, they draft well, they've got some good contracts, and I think it's time they use a couple of their 10 to 15 minute per game players for a bigger, better star. They've come out the other side of an injury-infested season on fire, sitting 3rd with some pretty notable wins. They're good at just about everything, being 7th in defensive rating, 3rd in offensive rating, and analytically, it's hard to find something they aren't good at. They are 2nd worst in turnovers per game, but 1st in pace, so there's probably a little bit of correlation there. They also foul the most per game and lack a cool-headed leader. There are a few names I like for this team, like Cam Johnson, Trey Jones, Carl Anderson, etc. But if there's one player I think could take this team to the next level, it's Lonzo Ball. After not playing for 2 years, Lonzo is back and making a great impact on the Bulls. Although earning $21 million this season in 20 minutes per game, he's been productive and will be straight into the rotation, off the bench, or even into the starters. I like the ball fit because he offers a bit of size in the backcourt, which the Grizzlies lack, as we all know. He's an incredible playmaker and defender. He gets you a steal and a half a game while giving you 5 assists. He's not turnover prone, and it looks like he'll fit in with the culture. And plus, can you imagine chucking lobs to Jar or Triple J? But what would it cost him? Well, I wouldn't go as far as saying Ball is a negative asset just yet, but earning $20 million a year isn't pretty. But luckily, the Grizzlies have a player in the exact same boat in Marcus Smart. Chuck him in with 2 seconds or a singular second, and I reckon that's good enough for the 6'6" guard. If you're thinking it's overs for Ball, If you're thinking that's over for Ball, he's in the last year of the deal, so they can also free up cap if they don't want to re-sign him, whereas Marcus Smart is getting paid for 2 more years. The Bulls accept this trade because it's probably one of the few offers they'll get for Ball, and getting a leader for the rebuild as well and some draft capital is good enough for the bench guy. Other than the guys I named, the Grizzlies have some pretty juicy trade exceptions. They could probably target a bench rebounder or an additional wing shooter. On to the Minnesota Timberwolves. After a huge trade which saw the former first pick and franchise cornerstone out the door for Randall and DiVincenzo, the Timberwolves this year have struggled to have a strong and consistent offense. Which makes it worse is it's incredibly frustrating watching a team where their 3-star players are so prone to turnovers. The roster has some glaring holes, no doubt, being 17th in assists and 20th in turnovers. They also have a severe rebounding problem, and the extent of fixing all the issues at the deadline seems pretty futile for a team destined to make the play-in. I would suggest bringing in some familiar faces like Monte Morris or Shake Milton, but I think they should end the Randall experiment before it even starts. There are a lot of bigger name contracts available at this deadline, so I think it's best to nip away at the issue. Calling up the Jazz, I can't believe it's my first time naming this guy in one of my mock trades. We've got John Collins. A former victim of ants, Collins has been having a sneaky good year and flown under the radar for the average NBA fan. Averaging 18 and 8, Collins offers a lot closer to Karl Anthony Towns, which worked so well for him last year. I mean, his competition is Randall. Shooting a blistering 45% from downtown, although on only 3 attempts per game, I'm sure the numbers won't change too much if he ups his attempts, considering he's a 37% career shooter. Although he still is offensive foul prone, it's better than having the current player with the 3rd most offensive fouls this season in Randall. He's been solid on defense as well ever since he made the move to power forward. He gets a steal and a block a night, as well as being highly mobile at the 6'9", although I wouldn't trust him guarding ones. That is a weakness that the Timberwolves can kill. Now the price tag. As mentioned before, I think the Randall experiment ends, but what does a package look like? Well, the market for him is rather awkward. Some teams rumoured to be interested in him is the Kings and the Thunder, but they have a few issues themselves. The Kings have a Fox issue, or the aftermath of the trade, and the Thunder have been interested, but I don't think they ruin their chemistry. So I've gone and put Randall and 2 to 3 seconds as my package. Utah accepts this because there are no offers from the teams I mentioned before. They are also getting another pretty decent asset to flip down the line, as well as 3 tries for a diamond in the rough. I doubt they could resist, especially because Danny Ainge loves his 2nd round picks. All in all, it makes too much sense for either side. Randall fit in Minnesota is awkward and is best used elsewhere, whereas the Wolves get similar production from someone younger and cheaper. Other options would be some playmaking. They've got Jose Alvarado, Monte Morris, Delano Banton, who could fit into their $2.5 million trade exception, but they also have a $4.6 million trade exception that they could use as well. Onto a team that's falling apart as we speak, we've got the New Orleans Pelicans. Zion's been available for years now, Ingram is available, and they just traded DeJounte Murray. But it looks like one down year for the Pelicans is enough to tear the walls down. I've used Ingram in a few trades, and quite frankly, I don't think DeJounte Murray has much value, and the Pelicans should at least try and retain 2 quality players. So I'm trading CJ McCollum, but where to? Well, I've got one location that makes perfect sense, and that's the Orlando Magic. These guys need 3-point shooting, and especially from the guard spot. They'll be bringing in a guy who earlier this season scored 50 points, shooting 10 from 16 from 3. CJ has been an outstanding volume shooter and decent secondary ball handler who probably, if he played a bit of his career in the East, would have been an all-star. He's almost been 50-40-90 a few times in his career, and now even at age 33 is giving you 22 points a night on 37% from 3, shooting 6 a game. It just makes perfect sense for the Magic. but what do they get in return? It'll be hard to gauge CJ McCollum's value to Orlando, since the mock trade I had for the Magic had them gaining Anthony Simons for Isaac, Houston, and a first. Comparatively, CJ is 8 years older on more money, but is scoring more and a better PER and has the higher ceiling. To play it safe, I think the Magic just really want someone who can fit that mold, and I would think they would offer the same package for CJ, and I reckon it probably gets it done. I like this move for the Pelicans because bringing in Isaac still allows them to be competitive next year after their hellish injury-infested season is over. Isaac is a defensive juggernaut, bringing in Houston, a young 6'8" forward with the ability to stretch the floor, and a first, which they can use in trades or to draft a talent. It's easily the best return they'll get, and the Magic are desperate to get someone like that. Other options are Ingram to the Pistons, Warriors as mentioned before, and even the Thunder, or sell some vet minimums. They have a lot of those players on those teams, so they can use Javonte Green or Tice, and most teams would want them at the deadline. On to OKC Thunder. A bit of a weird situation will be going down at the Thunder this deadline. They're one of the favourites in the league in a battle with the Cavs for the league's 1 seed. They have a lot of money freed up, so do they go all in for a player like John Collins or Brandon Ingram? Do they wait out a player like Lauri Markkanen when they are available next year? Or do they do some small retooling? Or do they do nothing at all? They're fine now, so they should be fine come postseason. I reckon they don't do too much, just some small retooling. The Twin Tower duo is the problem for me. Ihart and Chet have shown a bit of injury history, which has left the Thunder forced to play J-Dub at centre and try out the other Jalen Williams, who's just smaller for a centre and plays a bit like Brooklyn and Boston Blake Griffin. I personally believe Jalen Williams is better suited for the 4, so my trade I'll have the Thunder finding a taller, lengthier bench centre as some insurance. Calling up the Portland Trailblazers, I have the Thunder giving up Ousmane Dieng, and in return they get Duop Reath back and a second. My only trade where the guy that's dealt is worth more than the guy who they want in return. Reath is such a Thunder target to me. After breaking out to the basketball world with his efforts at the Olympics playing for Team Australia, standing at 6'11", Duop Reath has had a successful first year in the league, averaging 9 points, 4 rebounds and half a block and a steal in 18 minutes, with some pretty decent advanced metrics. Now in just his second year, the clinging addition has ate up all his minutes, so his role has been reduced to just 6 minutes a game. What sets him apart from most other centers is his polished defensive game. He has handles, can punish closeouts, has a quick first step, can shoot the 3 ball, has good touch around the rim and can bang in the post a little bit. He's also good as both the roller and popper and has a quick release. His defense outside of under the rim is quite sloppy, but he's mobile, and if it's in a defense like the Thunder, I think that could hide his weaknesses. He'll be playing behind Chet and Ihart of course, but if one goes down, the prospect of having Reath off the bench for certain matchups, for example the Grizzlies, Suns or Nuggets, Reath will be able to offer far more defensively at the rim than the 6'8" Williams. Not to mention the offensive side of the ball. It just makes too much sense for me for the Thunder to go and get Reath, but some of the names I like could be Neemias Queta, Jock Landale, Andre Drummond, or maybe they go and get Collins or Ingram. Up next, the Suns. The main name bought up in the Jimmy Butler sweepstakes, but considering you're going to be spending $150 million a year on 3 players who predominantly shoot mid-ranges, 2 of which are over the age of 35, is frankly nuts, and shows why Durant is a basketball parasite. When I look at the team, I see 2 issues. One issue is regarding the big 3, and the second is a big Bosnian issue who is terrible for the team and is earning $18 million this season. They are a second apron team, the most expensive team in basketball, which makes trades infinitely harder because they can't take back a cent over what they're giving out. They also can't use multiple contracts to make up a trade, so they are pretty much handcuffed. Lastly, Brad Beal, the main name in all the trades and all the plans for the Phoenix Suns, he'll have his final say on where it is dealt, thanks to his incredibly rare no-trade clause. If he doesn't want to go to Miami, he won't. Simple as that, which is the entire reason he went to the Suns for Chris Paul in 3 seconds in the first place. Although, per rumours, he's pretty checked out and underperforming in a cultureless Suns, I think he'd rather go somewhere where he can compete, and recently came out saying he won't be dealt to the Bulls for Levine, so there goes that. If you're the Suns, you're not paying $50 million for a bench player averaging 16 points, but you might just have to. But let's try and find a place for Jusuf Nurkic, because I think he's a bigger issue. I think I've absolutely cooked up a great trade which sees 2 former Suns back in uniform. Trading Nurkic and those 2 weird pick swaps they got from the Jazz, I have Smith and Torrey Craig coming back. There are multiple reasons why I like this trade for the Suns. 1, they get another scorer, good center to pair with Richards who they just got. 2, they get 2 good effective scorers. And 3, they get off a lot of money thanks to the trade exception from Okogie. Although the Bulls are kind of getting fleeced in this deal, they'll get 2 picks that will end up being, well, I'm not even really sure, but I'll know they'll be top 30. And when you're looking to rebuild, you need all the picks you can get. Plus, they can just buy out or keep Nurkic, who's only got 1 more year left on his deal. I would say they should ask for Bol, but a second apron team can't do multiple player trades. The Suns will probably still like a bit of playmaking, so they can go for Jose Alvarado, but I think their game will be fine. Now we've got the Portland Trail Blazers, a team which I absolutely abused last video. In past years, they've been a dumping ground and still hold some relics from their Dame era. They've been disappointing their fans, and to be fair, they've been underperforming with that roster, and I'm not too sure Billups is the future. They should look to clear up some money as they progress through their rebuild to give them more flexibility in the next few free agencies and drafts. They have a ton of players that some contenders could look to pick up, all of which I've named apart from one. DeAndre Ayton. After earning himself a nice max contract, Ayton was swiftly traded away when team wrecker Kevin Durant joined the Suns. Getting paid $34 million this season, averaging 14 and 10 on some pretty average defense, and with Donovan Clean emerging, I think I may have just found a destination for Ayton to be dumped. Calling up the Brooklyn Nets, I think you know where this is going. DeAndre Ayton is dealt to the Nets for Ben Simmons and a 2nd round pick. Expiring contracts are like diamonds for teams like the Blazers. Although they'll be paying $6 more million this season, Ben Simmons is on the last year of his deal. I'm not really going to talk about what he adds to the Blazers, because if I was the Blazers, unless he signs for cheap, I wouldn't have plans of keeping him around. But he's a great playmaker and defender. They also keep a bit of a height and allows Klingon to play as starting center whilst clearing up $40 million. But the Nets though, I've been talking about how they need to get some seriously good youth back in some of these trades, and getting Ayton in return for Ben Simmons is probably the best they can do. They took on Melton and Bogdanovic, 2 guys who won't play this season, so getting Ayton, a guy who can move straight into the rotation, is finally something different. He's a former number 1 pick, and for good reason. He had a great 2022 playoffs, but being around a certain crop of players such as LeBron and Durant can really stunt a player's growth. Maybe a role on a team with literally 0 expectation can help propel him into becoming a better player. Other options are pretty much just getting the best return for all their vets like Grant, who could go to the Warriors, Rob Will could go to the Pacers, and Duop Reath to the Thunder, etc. On to the Kings, who don't really need much post-trade, and I'm a big fan of bringing in Zach LaVine, but does he move the Kings into the playoffs? They've got one issue, and it's defense. They've got Keon Ellis and Murray as their 2 stifling defenders, but outside of that, no one on that roster is objectively a better than average defender. Statistics prove this, with them having the 18th ranked defense this season, and nothing changing or improving since Christie being named head coach. They need some better guard-wing defense as well as a backup center, but because the defense is so bad, I'll be going with the defensive wing. Calling up the Houston Rockets, I've got the Kings getting someone who's versatile. He can guard the guards and wings, but also has a little bit of experience at center, and that's Jae'Sean Tate. Earning $7.5 million this year, the Kings have the perfect contract to use as they give away Trey Lyles. I'm confused about their value as they offer completely different things, but I'll side with the modern day PJ Tucker being more valuable because of the Rocket system. Tate is quite literally the modern day PJ Tucker. He started his NBA career at 25, and since then he's stuck around the Rockets organization, offering a plethora of defensive options. Playing at small forward and power forward predominantly, Tate is only 6'4", but in a one-on-one he can hang with most. He just sucks at offense. Outside of layups and putbacks, Tate offers minimal offense because he's a 30% career 3-point shooter, a 69% free throw shooter, and a 30% shooter from the mid-range. But I mean, he fits a need and does it well, and luckily the Kings don't need offense, which is why they move Lyles to the Rockets, who need offense in almost every area on the court except for under the hoop. Lyles comes in as a 6'8" power forward with 2 hot shooting spots from behind the arc, being right above the break and the left corner, which they need, and that's about it. Other guys the Kings could go for could be Matisse Thybulle, Jared Vanderbilt, and Neemias Queta comes back. The San Antonio Spurs. After bringing in Fox for a half-eaten apple and a pair of socks, the Spurs could just pack up shop and not do anything for the rest of the season and fans would be happy. But no, not me. The biggest issue I see with this team is their 3-pointers. They just have a lot of shot chuckers. Although statistics suggest a 33% shooter is fine, I personally view a 36 to 37% shooter as elite. And when I look at the main rotation, they have 3 players. Champagny, who's good, but Paul and Barnes are as old as time, and for those to be your only shooters shooting 36% or above, yeesh. They just brought in Fox, who's a flash in the pan from downtown, shooting 32% this year and 33% career-wise. They are in dire need of some elite shooting from a wing or a power forward. Calling up the Charlotte Hornets, in what could be a pretty controversial trade, I have the Hornets giving up Josh Green for Chris Paul and 2 seconds. I just thought because Fox, Castle and Devin Vassell that CP's writing was on the wall. Love for his time at the Spurs, they no longer need him, but what they do need is 3-and-D, and that's what Green provides. Drafted 18th in 2020, Josh Green has had his moments in the league. Stuck on 2 pretty ugly situations, the Mavs with their change and the Hornets just being the Hornets, Green in my opinion still has another level to go to. He's pretty decent now and hustles on defense with quick hands and good endurance, but what really impresses me is his shooting. 26th in the league at the moment, shooting 41% on 3.5 attempts per game and a career 38% shooter. You're not getting this guy to score, but it helps when you have a good primary defender that offers two-way versatility and will open up the Spurs offense just a little bit more. For the Hornets, in my last video I talked about their desperate need for someone to steer the ship, and CP3 is their guy. As old as the Rocks, Chris Paul has been around the league for many years in many scenarios and always overperformed despite the lack of rings. 39 years old with 1 to 2 years left, Paul is going to be a great mentor for a young and immature Hornets team stuck licking the floor of the Eastern Conference. He'll guide Melo and hopefully pull a few of those guys back into check. They get 2 seconds, but I think he could go up to 3, which just increases their chance at finding a diamond in the rough. All in all, a pretty easy and necessary trade for both sides. Other options I like is Luka Garza, Chris Boucher, or Isaiah Stewart. Lastly, we have the Utah Jazz. Another bottom-dwelling year for the Jazz, who sit with the second worst record in the league, but second in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes. No matter the pick they get, the top 3 to 5 players can all turn organizations around. Not all hope is lost for the Jazz and its fans, however, because they have some nice pieces on the list, and it's just a matter of which pieces they plan to keep around for their next era. I'm not even going to go into what this team struggles with, because they are among the worst in almost every metric imaginable, but they are a tanking team and they don't care about what their weaknesses are. They re-signed Markkanen, so he can't be traded this year, but still leaves them with Jordan Clarkson, John Collins, Colin Sexton and some older folk like Svi Mykhailiuk available, who's 27 and has some decent value. The market is there for Collins, but really only 2 teams want him, plus I've already used him in a mock trade. Sexton is interesting, but I prefer the prospect of keeping him around a little, so that leaves me with Jordan Clarkson, and I've come up with an absolute belter of a trade for both sides. To finish the video off, I have the Miami Heat landing former 6th Man of the Year and a blend of Norman Powell and Michael Porter Jr. and Svi Mykhailiuk, and in return they dish out Terry Rozier and a first. A pretty decent trade for both sides. The Jazz get a 30-year-old scoring guard, as well as the Heat's first, while the Heat get off his contract and bring in 2 good players in their post-Jimmy era. The Heat take a risk and bolster their offense that they need so desperately, bringing in a combined 26 points per game. All these 2 players know how to do is score. Clarkson, the main piece of this trade, was an integral part for those Jazz teams with Mitchell and Gobert. His microwave scoring ability could at times bail the Jazz out of some pretty tough losses. His ability to score from everywhere, particularly the mid-range and paint, made him a headache to defend at times. Now the 32-year-old is having one of the worst seasons of his career, and it's tough to say if Father Time is creeping up on Clarkson, or if he's just on such a terribly buns team that it's impossible to be good. Hence, I say the risk. He's still giving you 16 a night, but the efficiency isn't there anymore. But I mean, when he was on a good team, he was a serial 6th Man of the Year contender, and this team is in desperate need of some creation from people not named Hero. They'll take what they can get. Svi, on the other hand, is a great contract, giving you 10 points a night. Svi is a human torch and will shoot shots even if there's a slight bit of an opening, which is great to watch in garbage time. What he brings to the Heat will be scoring from other avenues. Highsmith and Richardson aren't known first choice scorers and can't really create their own shot or are ballsy enough to do so. He's not going to be a game changer, but Svi can offer a lot more offensively from the 2 to 3 spot off the bench and can be hidden on defense, although he's athletic enough to hang. Clarkson is a mid-range and paint disruptor, whereas Svi is a 3 and drive kind of player, averaging 36% from 3. They'll change the look for the Heat and help them transform into a contender after the Jimmy fiasco is done. Now the Jazz do this because I doubt any team, really any team, remembers Clarkson exists, and they get a first round pick. I reckon that's the best offer they'll get, considering all they have to do is take on Terry Rozier's contract. Other moves could be Collins to the Thunder for Aaron Wiggins, filler, and some picks. Maybe they take on Jonathan Isaac's salary for Sexton. The Pistons could come knocking, but I mean, it's really all up to speculation. If you made it all the way through the video, thank you very much. This has been a bit of an uphill battle because of all the trades, and I've constantly had to change the script or change the editing, but it's finally out there, so thank you very much for watching. If you haven't watched my East video and it's still pre-deadline, go give that a watch. Or if you want my opinion on the Luka Doncic Anthony Davis trade, I've posted that one as well. If you like what you saw, please like and subscribe. Thank you very much.